So I am actually going to be delaying the review for MLS Match Week number 19 till tomorrow because I am actually going to be doing a review on the Gold Cup final between the US and Mexico, and I'll also do a kind of a quick recap of the Women's World Cup final today between the US and the Netherlands, which unfortunately I didn't watch the whole game, and unfortunately I, of course, woke up late to catch this game, which is not a big surprise because so far in this Women's World Cup final or in this Women's World Cup, I've been kind of sleeping in and didn't really catch a lot of the action. And I did catch most of the semifinal and also most of the quarterfinal that the U.S. women's national team played, but in this game, once again, I woke up late, and that I woke up at 9 in the morning, and that I only watched like the second half of this game. But in the second half, of course, is where we got those two go-to repeat champions again. And I thought throughout this game, and even looking back at some of the highlights in the first half, the U.S. was actually by far the better team. I mean, the Netherlands, I guess what they were trying to do in this game was that they were hoping maybe they can just sit back and somehow hit the U.S. on the counter, or in some way they can just hopefully sit back and then just absorb the pressure, and somehow they'll ride this all the way into the penalty kick shootout, where they're going to take their chances on the penalty kick shootout, which I don't blame them, because the U.S. is a very good team, and that the Netherlands, after what I know and what I've seen from them in these knockout stages, they kind of been using that kind of sitting back kind of strategy in a way to try to catch team on the counter attack and trying to find a way to score goals. But unfortunately, it did not work with the U.S. women's national team. That despite the fact that they did really had to be patient throughout this game and had to really fight very hard to try to get that first goal and trying to break down this low block that the Netherlands was setting up. We eventually got the breakthrough right around the 63rd minute, I think. I don't even remember some of the action that happened in this game. Keep in mind, this Sunday was probably one of the, if not the craziest Sunday that we ever had, because there was a lot of big games during this Sunday kind of action. We obviously got the Women's World Cup final, we got Copa America, and also we got the Gold Cup final. And I think by the end of the Gold Cup final, that was actually my 5th game that I have watched today, which is just absolutely insane. So bear in mind, if I don't remember some of the game, and especially since the Women's World Cup game was the first game I watched, bear in mind that I actually don't remember some of the action because it's been so long and that I've been watching so much soccer that I don't even remember some of the action that happened in that game. But one thing I do know is that Megan Rapinoe did give us the lead on a penalty, and I know throughout this Women's World Cup there's been a lot of controversy in terms of refereeing decision and also VAR decision, and this penalty did go to VAR, and that when I just had a feeling that when the U.S., of course, are going to have like a VAR situation, it's usually going to go in favor of them, and people are going to be upset about that because it seemed like the referee has been favoring the U.S. a lot in this World Cup, which in some sense, yes, they did kind of favor us a little bit, but when you look at this instant where one of the Netherlands player basically kind of put his foot way up near the shoulder of Alex Morgan and was trying to do kind of like a scissor kick kind of challenge on Alex Morgan. Yeah, there is no way in the world that is not a penalty. Like, that is an absolute stone cold penalty in my book. I mean, there's no way, and there is just no point that you should see a player to have his foot way up high at an opponent, near almost to the face of the opponent at any circumstances. So it was a great call by the VAR in that situation of awarding the penalty, which again, like I said, Megan Rapinoe basically puts that one away to give us the 1-0 lead. Then Rose Lavelle basically wrapped the game up about 15 minutes later to give us the 2-0 lead, and that is all it takes for us to repeat champions as the World Cup champion in women's soccer. And obviously congratulations to the US women's national team, not only now winning back-to-back title, but now our 4-time World Cup champion. And I'm not going to get into the controversial topic. Like, I think after this World Cup win, the first thing that a lot of people talk about isn't the fact that they were congratulating the U.S. women's team winning their 4th title, and that I think they're the first team to basically repeat champion in women's World Cup history. But the first thing that they talked about is the equal pay situation. And I'm still I actually kind of don't want to talk about that, because that does kind of go into a little bit of a political kind of stance, and I usually never want to talk politics in this channel or even on a YouTube video. Like, talking politics in a YouTube video or something that's connected to politics is a dangerous thing to do, and I always try to avoid doing that, which is why I'm not really gonna talk a lot about the equal pay situation and the whole situation of whether or not if the women's team should get the same amount of pay as what the men's team would get if they went to the World Cup. That being said, if you ask me what's my stand in terms of this situation, I would say that I think they deserve equal pay with the way that they've been performing, and that they actually draw more viewership than what the men's has been doing. And if that is the case, and if the money does come from the viewership, then how in the world does the U.S. women's team not get more money than, or not get around the same amount of pay that the men's team would get if the viewership is basically based on money? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But that is as far as I go with the equal pay situation, and I'm not going to really spend a lot of time in this video or even do a video about this, because it's a very controversial topic and it can easily go down to this political slope, which I really don't want to do that. So yeah, that being said, congratulations to the U.S. women's national team once again of winning the World Cup and become 4-time champion. But now let's talk about the men's side. And while the women's side of course win the World Cup and certainly brings a lot of joy to a lot of U.S. fans, the men's, however, unfortunately did not bring any joy. And as it is in most cases, the U.S. men's national team once again let down their fans. And in this game between us and Mexico, they of course lost 1-0 in this game. And as frustrated I am with this game, I definitely do see some positive with the way that the team play in this one, and also just throughout this whole tournament, which I of course will talk about right near the end of this video and right near when I finish reviewing what happened in this game. But when I look at what happened throughout this game and talk about what happened in the first half, the U.S. could have easily gone 1-0 up against Mexico. I mean, we had 2 big opportunities to score in the first 10 minutes. The first big opportunity was when Christian Pulisic was basically dribbling to the left side of the 18-yard box, and when he of course strikes it in a tough angle, Ochoa made a good save out of that. But I think Pulisic, consider he is really our only world-class player that we have on this national team, he probably should have just finished that one to give us the 1-0 lead. But that wasn't really the biggest opportunity. The second biggest opportunity that we had, and probably this is the biggest opportunity and the one that I think there is going to be a lot of regret, and that eventually it did kind of haunt us in the second half, was with Josie Altidore missing an absolute one-on-one golden opportunity to give us the lead, and instead of him putting that ball into the back of the net, he basically hits that one wide. And I know there's going to be a lot of criticism from U.S. fans of the fact that Altidore is just not performing whatsoever, and that it also kind of brings me talking a little bit later of the fact that I think one of the biggest issue that the U.S. have is not just the fullback situation, but it's also the striker situation. We just don't have a lot of good talent pool in the striker position right now. I mean, right now we're just really hoping that Josh Sargent and Tim Way will actually develop as a very decent striker, and that they could be like the next Landon Donovan or the next Clint Dempsey. But when you look at the striker pool that we had with just Josie Altidore and Jerzy Zardes, Altidore, he of course is injury prone, and that he does have times where he is not very effective going forward, and in this game it was an example of that, although he wasn't really 100% healthy coming into this game, in that he only play in this World Cup after he come back from multiple injuries that he suffered when he was TFC before this Gold Cup. And also Jerzy Zardes, yeah, I don't really need to say a lot about Jerzy Zardes of why exactly he is not a very good striker. I mean, he's a good hold up striker. That's really kind of one thing I would say, but at the same time, yeah, you know what else he could do where he just does not finish whatsoever, and that he also have very terrible first touches. But you know, we had two glorious chances to opening the score, didn't take advantage of that. But the other thing that I really like the US did in the first half is that we really shut down Mexico in the first half, and especially in those full backs where, you know, throughout the broadcast, I hear Stu Honan always talk about how the fullback position for Mexico is where their attacking usually comes, and that those fullbacks usually just push up forward and join in the attack and bring in those dangerous crosses. But throughout the first half, and at least for the first 22 minutes or so, we did a very good job shutting those fullbacks down and not really allowing them to do anything. Like Gallardo, who is really the most dangerous fullback for Mexico, was just completely shut down in the first half. Now, we also almost could have gone 1-0 in the first half when Ochoa almost made an absolute goalkeeping howler, and it was basically a ball that was over the top, and Ochoa was kind of come out of his line, almost was ready to try to claim the ball, but Pulisic actually got there first, and then as he basically trying to flick it around and trying to hits it off to, or hits it into the empty net, it just went wide of the post, and man, that would have been just a great time for us to give a 1-0 lead, because we definitely deserved the lead at that point. We absolutely outplayed Mexico. I mean, Mexico had more shots in the first half, but when you look at most of those shots, it's pretty much just gone completely into row Z every time. Like all the shots that they had were either block or just blast into the stand. So the U.S., you know, despite the fact that they didn't have more shots, they actually had more of the dangerous opportunity, but we just could not put those dangerous opportunity away. Now, in the second half, straight out of the kickoff, we had some pushing and shoving with both the U.S. and Mexican player, of course, come together, which is not a big surprise because you're always going to get a pushing and shoving that is going on. And I know there was, at the end of this game, I know a lot of U.S. fans are absolutely pissed off of the way how the referee handled this game, but I thought he did a decent job in this game. I mean, I know that there was some bad calls in this game and that he did let go of something, and especially right at the end, I feel like he literally decided to let Mexico time waste whenever they could, and that he only let like 3 minutes of added time, and by the time the 3 minutes were up, he immediately blows his whistle, even though Mexico, before those 3 minutes of stoppage time happened, they were still time wasting. And it was also the same thing in stoppage time too. So I think the referee probably should have blow his whistle a little bit later because of the time wasting. But overall, I actually have no problem with how the referee performed, and I'm not going to say that he is the reason why it cost us the game. I mean, you know, I know he was being very lenient in this game, not really showing his card, but sometimes, you know, when you look at how this game is, and especially in the first half, I really think he did a good job controlling this game. And even on the broadcast, Stuart Holding and John Strong talked about how the referee did a good job in terms of handling the game, and it seemed like the players were they were under control in the first half in terms of controlling the game. Now, the second half, however, maybe not the case because of the pushing and shoving, but I think, if I recall, that was really the only instant where it was getting very close to being a classic U.S. versus Mexico brawl when both of these teams kind of play each other. But yeah, after that, Jordan Morris had a chance to give give the U.S. a 1-0 lead, and it was a beautiful delivery into the box that Morris basically rise up above everybody to head that one in. But somehow, in some way, Gallardo clears that one off the line. Ochoa was clearly beat in that play, but Gallardo made a heroic goal-saving goal line save to keep this game at 0-0, and that eventually would be a big play in this game, because really after that big chance for Morris to basically give the U.S. a 1-0 lead, and unfortunately if it wasn't for Gallardo basically cleared off the line, it would have given the U.S. a 1-0 lead. Besides that, Mexico really started to get back in this game, or really started to grow in this game, and that this is when Tata Martino decided to kind of switch the tactics a little bit. And one of the tactics that I think was a big influence in this game, and a tactics that the U.S. just had no answer to it, is when he decided to switch Pizarro into the other wing, and that he just basically switched wingers. And after that, the U.S. just had no answer in terms of trying to dealing with the change of tactics, and that Mexico was started to try to press us, and that the U.S. was just getting pinned back throughout this game, and also giving the ball away very sloppily. And I was really getting nervous, the fact that eventually Mexico was going to score that goal. And there it is. In the 73rd minute, Jonathan Dos Santos scores from Raul Jimenez to give Mexico a crucial 1-0 lead. And as soon as this goal went in, I knew it was game over. Like, I just feel like with the way that this game was, and how it was mostly cagey, and the fact that both teams was really struggling going forward, all it takes is one goal, and if one of the shot ends up into the back of the net, there was no doubt in my mind that it is basically game over. And unfortunately for the U.S., that goal came from Mexico when Dos Santos, of course, once again scores from Jimenez. And yeah, I just thought that there was really no way we could have come back into this. And even though we were still trying to go forward and try to find the equalizer, Mexico did a good job in terms of defending. And I just had no hope, the fact that with the way that the U.S. play going for on the attack in the second half, and how there's just no fluidity and no creativity in the second half, and those chances that they had so many in the first half just kind of all peters out in the second half. Yeah, that's when I thought that it was pretty clear that the U.S. was going to lose that one, and exactly that's what happened. As at the end of the day, the U.S. of course lose this one to Mexico. And in terms of the shots, I actually got these mixed up right here. It's actually Mexico that had 20 shots in this game compared to 11 that the U.S. had. 5 shots on goal compared to 3 that the U.S. had. 11 shots off target compared to 6 that the U.S. had. 4 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that the U.S. had. And Mexico had 57% possession compared to 43% possession. And most of that possession that the U.S. or Mexico had in terms of dominating the possession came in the second half, when it just looked like Mexico had all the possession and U.S. just could not play out of the back. And overall it was a very frustrating game for the U.S. And I think in some way I would blame, there's definitely a share of blame in terms of why the U.S. lost this game. And I think one of the biggest blame has to be with the fact that because of our lack of finishing, and because of the fact that when we have Mexico in our throat, and that we had the chances to go up 1-0 and we didn't take them, that is one of the reasons why we lost that game. I mean, there's just so many times where when you see one team do not put away their opportunity, it just gives the other team a great opportunity to take advantage of that. And in this game, it was Mexico that, they able to take advantage of the U.S. being very sloppy going forward and unable to put away their chances to, of course, get that crucial goal that they have. And the other partial blame that I will also say has to be on Greg Berhalter. I think the starting 11 that he made wasn't bad, but it wasn't great at the same time. I wasn't really happy the fact that Bradley was in the starting 11 in this game, even though he has been in the starting 11 in multiple games in the Gold Cup. But it just makes me wonder, in a Gold Cup final, in a final like this, I just worry that I've seen this before when Michael Bradley is in the starting 11 in a crucial US game, he just completely flops. And in this game, he was probably one of the worst player, if not the worst player in this game, where he just offers nothing going forward and also in the defensive end. And the final thing that I think is the reason why the US and the blame for the US losing this game has to also be on the substitution that Greg Berhalter puts. I mean, some of the substitution that he puts just makes no sense. Like, for example, bringing Tim Reed off and bringing on Daniel Lovitz in this game. Like, I'm sorry, why in the world, in a game where we're down 1-0 and we need an attacking sub, why in the world does he decide to switch fullbacks? And Lovitz is not a guy that just goes up forward to try to create something on the attack. Like, if we are going to bring in a fullback in terms of late in the game and do a like-to-like switch, why not bring Nick Lima in there? Like, Lima is by far more of an attacking fullback than Lovitz is, so that just makes absolutely no sense why that is the case. And the other thing that I also noticed is that most of the sub that Berhalter made is basically defensive sub, which, again, it makes no sense why we're going to with defensive sub when it was clear that we need a goal, and that, you know, when we're down 1-0, we need to get a goal to get the equalizer. And I'm pretty sure a lot of US fans was also screaming the fact that Tyler Boyd, he's got to come on in this game, and yet he didn't come on in this game, and that it was clear as daylight that he could be the answer in terms of the attacking piece. Yeah, that is something that I really have to question Berhalter, and that is probably the thing that he got the most wrong in terms of his substitution. Like, it just makes no sense whatever, the fact that he decided to just go with defensive substitution when we clearly need a goal in this game. But the bottom line is, you know, despite the fact that we lost in this game and just overall in the Gold Cup, I think there's definitely some positive taking out of this. And I think overall, if you want to ask me if this has been a successful tournament for the US or not, I think it is. And I know to say that the US have a successful tournament, they need to win the Gold Cup. Like, every single Gold Cup tournament, it's basically Gold Cup or bust for the US heading into every tournament, because they're one of the best team, if not the best team in CONCACAF right now, and we are expected us to win the Gold Cup every single time. But knowing the fact that when you look at what happened coming into the Gold Cup and that the US was kind of like in a mess, and the fact that, you know, throughout this Gold Cup, there was a lot of pressure of the U.S. and certainly a lot of pressure on Greg Berhalter to get this team going. And so far, when I look at most of these games, yeah, they actually have done pretty well in most of these games and kind of passed the test in terms of just being a team that is going to take the next step. Now, obviously, I think there are still a lot of question with this team, and certainly there's still a lot of question of whether or not if Greg Berhalter is the right hire. Like, the verdict, I think, is still on whether or not if this was a smart hire by the U.S. Soccer Federation, because, you know, on one hand, we've seen times where Greg Berhalter does a good job in terms of getting this team motivated heading into games and able to play some attractive soccer in some sense. But there's also time where we saw what happened tonight, where he just made some dumb kind of substitution, and that was one of the big reasons why it cost us the game. So the verdict is still on him. And the other question with this team is, how are we gonna figure out the fullback and also the striker situation with this team? Because after this World Cup, after this Gold Cup, I still have question in terms of the fullback position, and how it's clear that Tim Ream is not our long-term solution in terms of the fullbacks. And maybe Nick Lima might not be a long-term situation too, because, you know, well, I think he's still the best option right now in the fullback, and I don't know why Greg Berhalter is not noticing that. I still feel like we definitely need we need to find a fullback in our our country pool that eventually will fit in there and be a good player. And in some way, we just need to find a replacement for DeMarcus Beasley. Like I've been saying many times with the U.S. men's national team that ever since DeMarcus Beasley no longer is with this team and retired from the U.S. men's national team, we just have not been able to find a replacement for them. And I'm hoping that we will eventually do it in the future. And also in terms of the striker pool, where it's clear that Josie Altidore and Jersey Zardes is not the answer to our striker position. Now, who do you actually decide to put in there? Obviously, there's a lot of talk that Josh Sargent and Tim Way would be those guys, but you don't know exactly. Like, they're still very young, and to expect them to really just grow into that role at such a young age, I feel like that is definitely going to put a lot of pressure on them, and pressure that I don't think it's necessary to push them to just be kind of the striker that we need in terms of this team. But overall, I think it's been a good tournament for the US, and that at least for once I'm actually proud of the way the team has played, and that in some way that does give me a little bit hope that this team can not only potentially win the Gold Cup heading into 2021, but maybe even qualify for the World Cup right now. I mean, there's no doubt with the way that the performance that the U.S. has been playing in this Gold Cup, yeah, I think this team is definitely better than the one that was doing the World Cup qualifying stage about a couple of years ago and ultimately failed to make it to the World Cup. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this game, and also what do you think of the U.S. women's national team game where they of course won the World Cup against the Netherlands. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.